What we're going to do today is like this. Last week, if you remember, we basically discussed the first three character traits, which were chesed, gevura, and tiferes, loving kindness, discipline, and compassion. We did not get a chance to really get into the nitty-gritty of how they play off of each other. Okay, so I want to do that today. Okay, and I want to, and then we'll launch into the next four. Okay, so let's go through this really quickly. The concept again is that there are 7 facets of our character. There are 7 character traits that we can either display in power or out of power, depending on how we're doing in life. And those character traits all interplay with the 7 character traits, i.e., kindness interplays with humility. So let's look at the examples of the last week we discussed the first 3. This week we're going to discuss the last 4, but we're going to quickly just go through the interplay of kindness and discipline with all the other elements. Okay, so here we go. We've got kindness and kindness. Okay, that's pure, unadulterated kindness, which means when I give, am I giving for an ulterior motive, or am I giving purely out of kindness? Okay, so that's basically checking how much kindness is in our kindness. Next, discipline of kindness. Am I giving kindness too much to too many people? Am I causing other people harm by giving them too much? Right? There's a huge problem today of people who are called enablers. What is an enabler? An enabler is someone who has undisciplined kindness. They don't know when and how to stop being kind, and it's hurtful to them and to the people that they're doing kindness to. Number 3, compassion of kindness, which means, am I able to achieve that perfect blend of both pure kindness, but also with the disciplined approach to it. Number 4, endurance of kindness. When I do things that are kind, do they have an endurance? Do I wake up one day feeling great and saying, oh, today I'm going to volunteer for Yad Ezra, but next week I wake up feeling not so great and I say, today I'm not going to volunteer for Yad Ezra? Or is my kindness enduring? I made up in my mind, I'm going to volunteer for Yad Ezra every Wednesday morning, and come anything or high water, I will be there, right? That's enduring kindness. Does my kindness have endurance? Some people also can be incredibly kind individuals, but catch them on a bad day and boom, you do not want to be near that twister. You know what I'm saying? So that's the question of endurance and kindness. Next, the humility of kindness. When I am able to be kind to others, do I recognize what an amazing gift it is that I have the ability to display my kindness, to give people charity, to bake them a cake, to help them pay off their gas bill? Or do I walk around that's right, look at me, Mr. Kind. Yep, one more year in a row now. It's 7 years in a row that I've been named Mr. Kind Universe. Yes, I'm kind of that guy, right? So do I have the humility in my kindness or not? Next, relationships, bonding of kindness. Do I find that through the acts of kindness that I do, I build deeper relationships with people? Or does it sort of set me apart from them? Sometimes there's this experience where someone will do someone else a favor, a kindness, a big one especially, and then the relationship starts to grow sour. It's almost like there's a power imbalance. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? And that's not a good thing. So we talk about Yesod Shebechesed, the foundations and the relationships that you're able to build through kindness. Are you able to do that or not? And lastly, there is Malchus Shebechesed, the kingship, the nobility of kindness. When doing kindness, does it lift you up, bring you to a more noble state, and does it ennoble the people that you're interacting with, or does it bring you down, you become harried and skeptical and negative, and they become that way? So Malchut, kingship, is about sort of leadership and growth and sort of bringing the whole thing to an upper level, kicking it up a notch through that action. So that's an example of how kindness, we just used kindness, and we went through all 7 character traits as they relate to kindness? Let's do it with discipline. Number 1, kindness of discipline. Am I able to be kind while disciplining? This is a tough thing. Because when we discipline, we're generally, most of us are not born. There are certain people, well, I had some teachers, I gotta be honest. I had some teachers who were just natural born discipliners. I think they took up the teaching profession so they could yell at kids and like get away with it. So there are certain people who are natural born discipliners. For many of us, it's uncomfortable. Which means that by the time we have to discipline somebody, whether it be an employee, a child, a spouse, right? When I say discipline, I don't mean like, I'm talking about like sort of chastise or whatever it is, or even ourselves. We're off of our normal balance. We're sort of standing on one foot, we're shaky. And because of that, we often sort of just roll straight in. And it can be like a steamroller on somebody. So kindness of discipline means, are you able to be kind while you discipline others and yourself? Sometimes we need some self-discipline. That's one of the strongest parts of Gevura. Ezahu Gibor, who is the strong person? HaKoveshes Yitzro, he who is able to conquer his yetzer, his inclinations. But you got to do it with softness. You can't beat yourself up too much. We, especially as Jews, we're really good at beating ourselves up with like a 40-pound mallet. You know what I'm saying? Just beating ourselves up. You got to be able to do it with kindness. No, I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person, and that's exactly why I need to work on this. Next, discipline of discipline. The most classic aberration of discipline, where people are not using what's called Gevura Shegevura, is dieting. Dieting is an exercise of discipline. I say, I'm not eating in a healthy way. I'm eating too much. It's not good for me. It's not healthy. It's not halachically okay. It's not morally correct. I'm going to go on a diet. And from now on, for the next, I'm never eating carbs again. And then we do that for 3 weeks or maybe 3 months. And we maybe even lose a lot of weight. But then there's that pasta bar. And we're just on a vacation. And it's just a pasta bar and it's just on vacation. And we suddenly find ourselves knee-deep in pasta. And then once we blew it already, we might as well just get the Italian bread along with it, with the garlic, And before you know it, we've lost our whole discipline. And we're back, and then 3 months later, we go back on, and then we go back off. Like, that's American-style dieting, right? We're on, and we're off, and we're on, and now I got to work on being on time. And for the next, 3 weeks, I'm super on time. I'm early to everything, but then I'm super late again, and then I'm early at everything. It's like, are we disciplined in our discipline? Which, by the way, is, you know what? No, that's endurance of discipline. I'm sorry. Right? That was wrong. No, that's endurance of discipline. Does our discipline stay constant throughout? Discipline of discipline means, do I discipline too much? A father whose son spills a cup of milk or breaks a glass and starts yelling and screaming, that's not discipline. That's out of control discipline. That's undisciplined disciplining. Right? So that's Gevura Shegevura. I'm sorry. The other one about the constancy and the stability is endurance. Okay, then compassion of discipline. Compassion of discipline is being able to find that perfect balance of being able to discipline somebody with love, but with firmness. Okay? Love and firmness. Okay, then you have endurance of discipline. Can you stay stable with the way you keep yourself disciplined, or is it on and off? I'm dieting, I'm not dieting. I'm on time, I'm not on time. I'm kind, I'm not kind. Okay? Well, and then you have humility of discipline. Let's say you are a disciplined individual. Let's say you're one of those people who's always on time for everything. It's very easy for you to think that you're much better of a human being than all those latecomers, right? Basically what I'm saying is you think you're better than me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not that disciplined time-wise. You think you're better, no. So you think you're better than other people in general. You come on time, you suddenly think, or you're disciplined with your weight or your way you eat or whatever it is. Often people who are disciplined in those areas, whether it's timeliness or diet or whatever it is, they kind of feel better than all the other people, whereas we have no idea what the other people went through. We have no idea what their life is, the kind of chaos they grew up with, the kind of, whatever it was. Maybe they were starving as kids. So humility of discipline means be disciplined, be on time, eat well, don't yell and scream, etc., etc. But when you see other people who are not as disciplined as you, have the humility to say, thank God I'm able to have this stability and this discipline in my life. Because I know that for a lot of people, it's almost impossible because of the way that they grew up and the challenges that they face that thank God I didn't face. So there's that humility in your discipline. Then there's bonding, relationships of discipline. Can you build relationships with people while disciplining them? A husband and wife, what is a wife called in the Torah? Ezer kenegdo, a helpmate opposite him. The way she's his helpmate is by being opposite him and sort of stopping him from his excesses or whatever it is. And the same thing for him. He's got to be opposite his wife, helping her and molding her. But the question is, when we have to discipline other people, or even ourselves, do we break down that relationship? Do we create a disconnect with that person? Or can we actually foster a deeper relationship through constructive discipline? Okay? And last but not least, there's kingship of discipline, which means when you discipline other people, when you discipline yourself, does it lift you up or break you down? Right? Does it lift them up or break them down? Are you leading like a king or are you leading like a tyrant? Are you disciplining yourself like a king or disciplining yourself like a tyrant? So here are two examples. We took kindness and we took discipline, and we showed you how for each one of them, all 7 of the other elements apply. Now we're going to skip compassion, and we're going to go, because compassion is sort of the perfect blend between the two, and now we're going to move on to this week's stuff. That was more a recap of last week's. 2 weeks ago, we learned about 7. Why 7? Last week, we learned about the first 3. This week, we're going to learn about the final 4. So let's just recap. The first 3 from last week were chesed, loving kindness, and benevolence, gevura, which was justice, discipline, restraint, and awe, tiferes, which was beauty and harmony and compassion. Today, the final 4 that we're going to study is netzach, endurance, fortitude, hod, splendor, humility, yesod, foundation, bonding, preparation, and malchus, kingship, nobility, leadership. Now, what is the difference between? We're going to put aside kingship for a moment, and we're going to talk right now about what we call the triads. Triads are sets of 3. The way these things work is there's 2 sets of 3, and then kingship is like sort of a result of the 2. So you have, last week we discussed, we have kindness, and we have, so kindness will be on the right side, which is your left, okay, whatever. So it's either my right, your right, but kindness is on the right side, discipline is on the left side, and compassion is when you perfectly blend them. This week we're going to learn about endurance, humility, and relationship, and that's another 3, but it's below them, so to speak. How does it work? The first triad is all about how you act in your environment, the things that you do in your life. Kindness, discipline, compassion. Full out giving, restrained, or balanced. That's kindness is full out giving, restrained is discipline, or balanced, which is compassion. But it's confined to the giver. It's confined to what you do. The second triad is about actions that are going to affect the future. Okay? It's more about building and producing for the next generation. Okay? So, Kabbalistically, by the way, the first 3, okay, which are kindness, discipline, and compassion, are represented by the right arm, left arm, and the trunk. That's what you use, the top part of your body, your torso to your neck, is what you use to interact with the world primarily. Right hand is kindness, left hand is discipline, trunk is compassion. Okay? The second triad is represented either by right leg, left leg, and maleness, or even, according to some opinions, by right testy, left testy, and maleness. The difference between that being that the first set is represented by what you do and interact with the world now. The second set is how you interact for the future. The lower half of the body is all really, if you think about it, the lower half is always about what you do for the future. The second half of the body, even the legs, what do your legs do? Your legs usually get you to where you need to go to do what you got to do with your hands. So legs are about planning for the future, right? I use my legs to get to the table to then use my arms to fill up my plate, right? I use my legs to go to my kitchen, and then I use my arms to bake a cake. Okay, so the legs are about the future. The bottom half of the body, and especially once you start talking about the reproductive organs, that's definitely about building towards the future. Now, the first triad, is about how you would interact with your children. Okay, the second triad is more how about you interact as a husband and wife, which is building for the future, which is why it's the lower part of the body that's used for those activities. But the triads are linked, okay? Wait, so here you have the two triads, right? On the top you have kindness, discipline, and compassion. On the bottom you have endurance, humility, and bonding and relationships. But they're connected, which means kindness is connected to endurance. Discipline is connected to humility, and compassion is connected to bonding and building. Okay, let's go back now for a second and go through the connections. Here we go. Oops. Okay, let's go with kindness and endurance. Okay, remember, what is kindness? Kindness is projection out into the world. Chesed is going out of yourself, projecting out into the world. Endurance just means that projection keeps on going. Gevura is restraint and discipline, which is connected to humility. When you're in a relationship, right, your humility is what gives you that restraint. You hold back. I recognize that I'm not the expert in this. My wife is, so I'll pull back. Okay? And then bonding, compassion is the perfect blend of kindness and discipline. Bonding, the way you bond with somebody, a spouse especially, is when you have the perfect blend of, on one hand, being able to be enduring and be dominant almost. On the other hand, knowing when to be passive. Okay? And that's sort of the relationship that creates a bond between a husband and wife. When there's a proper mix of endurance and dominance and passivity and humility. And then you get a perfect relationship. Each spouse knows when and where to push and when to pull back. If you have a relationship where one side is always pushing, always enduring, always dominant, and the other side is always passive, what's that called? A disaster, right? Okay, therefore the real bonding that really creates a relationship and builds is when you know when to push in, push out. When you sort of know when to take your place. Okay. Let us go to netzach. Netzach, endurance, fortitude. This is full out giving in a relationship. Again, remember, kindness is full out giving. Netzach is full out giving, full out pushing forward in a relationship where one side dominates. It reflects the fourth day of creation. What was created on the fourth day of creation? All the suns and the moons and the stars were put into their right place, and there they were set forever and ever and ever. Right? Meaning, the entire trajectory of all the cosmos are set in place. You have scientists who are scouring the skies looking for comets or meteorites that might be headed towards Earth. And they'll sometimes find one and they'll say, uh-oh, this meteorite looks like it's going to hit Earth in the year 27,412. And because these meteorites, they follow a very, very, very set pattern. You can calculate their velocity, you can calculate their angle, and you know where they're going. Just like this Earth goes around the sun every 365.25 days. And just like the sun, the Earth revolves on its axis every 24 hours, right? These things are set. They are enduring. The sun, the moon, the stars. Boom, set in place. Total dominance. Who's the fourth leader of the Jewish people? Moses. Moses gave us a Torah that is supposed to be set in stone for all of history. It's not meant to be played with. It's not meant to be altered and changed. Well, yes, the Torah says that we shouldn't do X, Y, and Z, but today we're in a modern era, so we're going to do X, Y, and Z. That's not the way the Torah was meant to be done. The Torah was given. God said, this is it. Don't switch it out. Don't change it up. These are the terms. That's Moses, the one who brought down the Torah, total dominance. Netzach is about creating goals and sticking to them. Now, here, we're going to tell you guys a Netzach story. A good friend of mine, I will not tell you his name because he prefers not to be named, however, he's a good man. He and I went to a basketball game. This story goes back many years ago. It was the very first time that the Pistons were playing against the Cavaliers, who then had LeBron James, as they still do now. LeBron James at that time was by far, this goes back maybe in 2008 or whatever it was, he was by far the most dominant player in the league. The Pistons had just got a fellow named Allen Iverson. Okay, he was also an MVP, a VIP, and he was amazing. And we go to the game. On the way to the game, my friend mentions to me, he's like, by the way, I didn't daven Ma'ariv yet. I didn't daven evening services yet. I'm like, okay, I didn't either. That makes two of us. So, basically, we get to the game, and he's like, listen, I think we need to leave early because I want to catch a minyan. This friend of mine has not missed a minyan, which is praying with a quorum, okay? This guy has not missed a minyan in probably about 8 or 9 years. He's like, I think we need to go back, like around halftime maybe, or a little later, whatever it is, because I want to catch minyan. I'm like, yeah, whatever, okay, yeah, I think so too, maybe, whatever. I'm like, okay. What happens in this game? In the beginning, the Cavaliers are blowing out the Pistons. And they go to the locker room at halftime, and the Cavaliers are beating the Pistons by probably about 16 points. The total blowout. I'm like, okay, we can miss this game. So he says, we're going to leave the game at 9:30, or maybe 9:15, at 9:15. So we have 45 minutes to get back to Oak Park Southfield for the 10 o'clock evening services. I said, okay, fine, it's a blowout. We'll leave at 9:15. What happens? I don't know what happened in the locker room. Maybe they were given some sort of special injections. I have no idea. But the Pistons came out, and they were on fire. They just started scoring, and the stadium's going wild. There was a guy, was it Rashid Wallace. Okay, there you go. So in the first 10 minutes of the third quarter, or the first 5 minutes, they're just taking away the lead slowly. Then they're down by 6 points. Rashid Wallace for 3. It's good. Next possession, the Cavaliers don't score. They bring the ball down the court. Rashid Wallace for 3. It's good. The whole entire stadium is standing on their feet. The Pistons have taken the momentum from the Cavaliers, the greatest team in the NBA, with LeBron James, the greatest player. Everyone in the stadium is on their feet cheering. It's 9:15. And me and my friend start packing up our bags to leave. And there's this guy, he's like 2 rows behind us. And he looks at us like we're absolutely crazy. He says, what are you guys doing? This is the greatest game the Pistons have played all season. Where are you going? And I'm thinking, how do I explain to him? Do you know where we're going? We're going to daven Ma'ariv. With a quorum, by the way, because we're supposed to daven with a quorum, and my buddy here hasn't missed minyan for 8 years. I don't know how well he would have been able to comprehend that. But that's a man with endurance. That's a man who has not missed a minyan in 8 years, 9 years. That's a man who schedules flight times to ensure that he won't miss a minyan. That's a man who will drive his family from Detroit to New York, and he'll stop off in Cleveland and catch evening and afternoon and evening services.
Yeah, but what about your kindness for agreeing to do this?
He paid for the tickets. Anyway, the bottom line is, that is, my friends, that's netzach. That's endurance. That's fortitude. That's strength. That's dominance. So who really dominated that game? Not Rashid Wallace, my buddy. Okay. Next, hod, empathy, humility. It's the opposite of netzach. Okay? If netzach is about dominance, then hod is about passivity. It's about humility. Now here's the thing. This is not to be confused with being weak. It's a strength to be able to say, I know my place, and I know that the person I'm talking to knows more than I do, has got a better handle on the situation, and I'm going to listen to that person. A friend of mine is a doctor, and he has a mug, not at the office, but at home, and it says, my medical degree is worth more than your Google search. You know what I'm saying? Because here he is, he's a doctor, and he'll tell people, like, this is what I'm seeing from the labs or whatever, and they're like, yeah, but I Googled it, and are you out of your mind? You Googled it? Right? This guy went to 800 years of school. This guy's been practicing as a doctor. He sees this stuff all day. He's looking at your reports, and you Googled it?
Well, you can ask questions.
You can ask questions, that's true.
After you Google it, you can ask the doctor questions. You give him credit for being...
You can definitely ask him questions, but at the end of the day, there's a time to be humble, and that's a strength, and say, you know what? This guy knows better than I do. And maybe, based on my Google search, I have, I have lupus, but based on my doctor's reading of my labs, I actually have a bad case of food poisoning. Whatever it may be, right? That's humility, and it's not a weakness. Being passive in that situation is not a weakness, it's a strength. When it comes to furnishing our home, whatever my wife wants, is that a weakness? No. It's the way you're supposed to do it. That's her domain. That's her domain, right? So hod, it's interesting. Hod, which is humility, also comes from the word like beauty. It's a beauty when someone is able to have that humility and just say, you know what? Those people know better, and I'm going to trust them. Unfortunately, it's so uncommon. So that is what hod is. It's the passivity that comes from humility of recognizing, like, for example, God says that the best way to live is by doing this and this and this and this, keeping Shabbos and kosher and doing these mitzvot and all that. And I think, well, no, I could do it my way. No, have that humility. Have that beautiful humility to say the creator of the world knows best. That's a beautiful humility. That's a good trait. Now, of course, by the way, if you have too much humility, and you never argue with whatever your spouse says goes, no matter what, then you're a doormat. That's not a good thing, right? I'm trying to say, the point is, this actually is going to bring us to our next one in a second. Here we go. Now, what is hod represented? It's the fifth day of creation, right? Because it's the fifth character trait, the fifth day of creation. What happened in the fifth day of creation? Fish and birds were created, which means it's the first time that God seems to be giving up on his dominance. Because the fish and the bird, they do whatever they want. They're not calculatable like the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon and the stars, totally, perfectly in place. God said, here you are. And that's how they go. The fish and the birds, they move around it looks like as if whatever they do, they want to do, they do. So it's almost like God is giving up of his dominance and allowing someone else's dominance, the bird's dominance, to take over. It's like God's sort of being more passive. The leader that this corresponds to is Aaron, who served in the tabernacle as the high priest. There's a famous verse that says that when the high priest, the only person who was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies was the high priest. And the only day of year he was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies was Yom Kippur. Exactly. There's a verse that says, "Adam lo yiyeh ba'ohel." No man can be in the tent at the time when the Kohen goes in to atone for the people. So the mystics, the Hasidic rabbis say, it means that no man can be there, even the high priest himself. What do you mean the high priest is going in? What that means is like this. If the high priest goes in with the attitude like, I'm the man, that's a problem. He's not going to be able to effectively atone for the Jewish people. If he goes in as in like, I'm nobody, I'm amazingly blessed and humbled by this awesome responsibility of going in and sees himself as like a nobody, then he's actually able to atone for the people. And no man shall go into the tent at the time when the Kohen goes in to atone for the people. Means if he sees himself as the man, that's a problem. If he sees himself as like, I'm nothing, I've just been given a crazy opportunity, amazing opportunity and responsibility, and I'm humbled, and I feel like I'm probably not up to task, but this is the job that I've been given and entrusted with, so I will do it. That's the kind of attitude you go in with. That's Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the high priest, who's known as Ohev Shalom, Verodeh Shalom. He loved peace. He ran after peace. All he wanted to do was to see other people together. He took no stance. He could blame things on himself. I spoke to this guy, I spoke to that guy, going around making himself out to just do whatever he can for the peace of others, the humility. Okay, that's Aaron. An example of Hod. Okay, this, my friends, is my wife. Okay, that's right. Now, my wife has a verse in the Torah that's probably her favorite verse. Her name is Sarah. The verse says in Genesis 21:12, and God said to Abraham, anything that Sarah says to you, heed her voice. That's my wife's favorite verse. Anything that Sarah says to you, heed her voice. Now, what did that mean? That meant that Avram had to recognize that at the end of the day, Sarah was actually a greater prophet than him. The Talmud tells us that Sarah had a higher level of divine inspiration and intuition and prophecy than Avram had. So now Avram and Sarah have a disagreement about what to do with their child Ishmael, who's been acting up, who's trying to kill Yitzchak, the heir apparent. And Sarah says, we got to send them out. And Avram says, I don't want to send them out. It's my kid. And Sarah says, no, they need to be driven out of the house. This guy's a toxic problem right now. Avram doesn't know what to do. God says, listen to Sarah's voice. She has a greater level of prophecy. Being passive and listening to somebody else is not a bad thing when it's called for. Okay, which then brings us to Yesod, foundation, the perfect relationship. Each partner knows when to assert and when to acquiesce. This way they're able to build together. They build together as a couple because they both know when to be dominant and when to be passive, when to assert or when to acquiesce. It also represents a duality of abstinence, pulling back, and giving. It's represented by the sixth day of creation. What's the sixth day of creation? What was created on the sixth day of creation? Mankind. In one way, so to speak, God is giving up total sort of control. Mankind is the only being in the world that has pure free will. So God is sort of giving up an enormous amount of his dominance and letting mankind take a stab at it, so to speak. On the other hand, God also tells mankind exactly what to do. There's a level of dominance there too. And this is able to build a perfect relationship. When we use the free will that God gave us and we listen to the statutes that he gave us, we're able to create the perfect relationship with God, which is the ultimate bonding and preparation for the world, the ultimate relationship in this world. Okay, the parallel is the leader of Joseph. Okay, remember I said to you that the leaders of the Jewish people are listed as Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, David. Joseph is out of order. If you went by chronological order, it should have been Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Aaron, Moses, David. But that's not the order. The order is based on the traits that they represent. Joseph represents the idea of proper relationship, proper abstinence, and proper building. What is the action that catapults Joseph to greatness? When he is seduced daily by the wife of Potiphar. He's a slave in a foreign land. No one knows what he's doing. No one's going to hear about it. And yet, the wife of Potiphar, day in and day out, and day in and day out, tries to seduce him, even shows him in the stars, that the stars say that greatness will come. Jewish leaders will come from her house and Joseph. The stars are saying, you need to be with me. But Joseph says no. He's properly abstinent, and then he also properly builds. Who actually was his wife? His wife was a girl that was in the house of Potiphar, who was an offspring of Dinah and Shechem. Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and Shechem, the prince of the city of Shechem, who violated her. They had offspring. The offspring was sent away, and that's who Joseph ends up marrying. And they end up having two children, Manasseh and Ephraim, who become tribes of Israel. Because when you lay the foundation properly, and you don't lay the foundation where it doesn't belong, and you lay it where it does belong, then you're able to build a huge tower on top of that. He's the only one of the 12 tribes who has children who are also tribes. You ever realize that? There are 12 tribes. Jacob has 12 children. The only one of the 12 children who has children who are also considered tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, is Joseph. Because he laid the proper foundation. And when you lay the proper foundation, you can build the biggest skyscraper on top of it. Okay. This number represents the sum total of the perfect relationship and person. Of the perfect relationship and person, right? It's 6. Remember, 6 is the sum total of the physical parts. There's 6 directions in the physical world. That's the 6 directions. If not the 6th, then the previous 5 fall away. If you can't get it straight at the end of the day, if you can't do the proper actions or you can't do the proper actions to continue it on to the next generation, you get nothing because it dies away. Even if you got it all right, if you have the proper 5, let's say, but you don't have the proper 6, you don't have the ability to properly relate and build and lay the foundation, then all the great things that you're going to do are not going to get passed on to the next generation, and it ends with you. However, if you're able to get all 6 perfect, you are in an amazing place. Here, so Yesod, by the way, Yesod, and it's very interesting, we are now in the 6th millennium. The year is 5776, which means that we are in the 6th millennium of the world, which means that our challenge is Yesod. If you look at today's generation, I would say one of the biggest challenges is in the areas of purity, in the area of sensuality. What's available today at people's fingertips is absurd and unimaginable to people living 500 years ago. I mean, you don't have to go out into the street and go to the bad part of town. It's all available on the internet in front of you, whatever it is. And just in general, the level of laxity in these areas is so great. That's because we're living in the 6th millennium. This is the struggle of this millennium. We're living in the Yosef millennium, where the struggle is to be able to maintain our purity in this area. An example of Yesod, okay? This is a picture of Eleanor Roosevelt with her husband Franklin D. Okay? Now, there's a story that happened during World War II. There's a bunch of rabbis who were going to the White House, and they were going to meet with Eleanor Roosevelt. And they ended up lining them up in an order. I don't know how they decided the order. The first person on line is an Orthodox rabbi. And his custom is he does not touch other women that are not his wife or his children. Did they tell the story before? No? So here he is. He's like, what am I going to do? One thing is he was like the last rabbi in line or whatever. Eleanor Roosevelt is walking towards him, and she's going to put out his hand, and what's he going to say to her? Which is, by the way, that's a common situation. What do people say? Like, how do you explain? Like, we don't, you know. So finally, he's like freezing up. She walks over. Hello, hello. She puts out her hand, and he says, Honorable First Lady, while I'm greatly pleased to meet you, I have to tell you that my religion only allows me to touch women who are in my immediate family. Eleanor Roosevelt looks at him and says, boy, I wish my husband had that religion.
Yeah. Very smart.
Okay, so that's about setting the right sort of boundaries and creating the right relationships, which involves abstinence where abstinence is called for, and building where building is called for. Okay, that is Yesod. Next, Malchut, nobility, kingship. That is, now here's something fascinating. Malchut, nobility, kingship, is not something that is its own entity. It's rather the ability to take everything that was previously done and build it up. I'll give you an example. In Judaism, we have two types of king. We have a melech and a moshel. A melech is a king who is elected by the people or is ruling with the will of the people. It is the will of the people that allows him to rule. A moshel is a tyrant who rules against the will of the people. Okay? Now, when you're a king who rules with the will of the people, you don't have your own power. The authority is given to you, so to speak, by the people. However, now that you have that authority, you use it to build up the whole kingdom. So again, it does not have anything of its own, but rather it takes what was given to it by the others and builds it up. Okay. A king has nothing of his own, yet his people are totally dependent on him. What is this? If we described all the different body parts, so to speak, that the first 6 were compared to, what is the 7th compared to? The 7th is compared to the female. Because the female doesn't take anything of her own, so to speak. She rather receives the energy from someone else. Right? Remember, the perfect 6 culminates in the 6th one, which is the male. And the male gives over the seed to the female. And she is able to take that little tiny seed And if it's laid properly, the right foundation like we described, and she built it up into a human being, the greatest thing in the world. I was at someone's house yesterday. They had just given birth to a beautiful baby girl. And I was telling her, my wife, God willing, is also due very soon. And I was telling her, I told her, there's like, I think I saw a t-shirt. It's an amazing t-shirt. It's for women, and they wear it and they say, I make human beings. What's your superpower? Right? Think about that. It's an amazing power. It's the greatest power in the world. But again, she needs the raw material from someone else. That's what a king is. The king is the one who receives the raw power from the people, but then takes the power they give him and builds up the whole country. The female takes the power invested into her by the male and then builds it up into the greatest edifice ever, a human being. It represents the seventh day of creation, of course. Now, what happens on Shabbos? What was created on Shabbos? Nothing. That's why we don't create on Shabbos either. But rather, we're supposed to use all the things that we use in the 6 days of creation. We make food, and we build houses, and then on Shabbos, we just simply sit back and live in it and build up our families, ourselves, by specifically not being engaged in the other 6. We take what the other 6 gives us, right? The other 6 is when we work, we make our paychecks, we make our food, we make our chicken soup, we make our challah, and then on Shabbos, we don't create anything new. We just take all the things that were created previously, and we build up the most amazing thing, which is our neshama, our families neshama, our community, through the experience of Shabbos. That's the seventh day of creation. Who is it paralleled by? It's paralleled by the great Jewish leader, King David. King David is the ultimate king. He was exceedingly humble. Right? He said, I am a worm and not a man. Right? Meaning he did not seem to, for a king, you think about Louis XIV. I am the God. I am the sun god. Right? That's Louis XIV. What does King David say? Va'anochi tola'as v'lo ish. And I am a worm and not even a man. Right? I have no greatness in myself. Myself, I'm like a lowly worm. I haven't been given, invested, an amazing job and an amazing responsibility by the Jewish people. Additionally, he had the heart of the whole people in him, which is how he was able to write the book of Psalms. Here's an amazing thing. If you're ever feeling down, I challenge you to do the following exercise. Open up a book of Psalms to any page and read 10 chapters. 10. And I can assure you that one of them will speak to you. How did King David do that? How did King David write a book that no matter who in this room, no matter what they're going through, you could be going through great times and you just feel like an outpouring of appreciation? You open it up, you'll find that in there, within the first 10 chapters that you read. You could be broken just having found out that your child is sick. Open it up, you'll find something there too. You could be concerned about your financial future. Open it up, you'll find something in there too. How did a man write that? Because he had the heart of the whole people in him. We invested ourselves into him, and then he gave us the most amazing kingdom the Jewish people ever had. Right? The glorious era of the Davidic line. And he gave us the book of Psalms, which is the book that we can all turn to for solace and strength, no matter what we're going through. He took the energy of the previous 6 and he built it up. And by the way, hence through him will come the child. Remember, the 7th is like the feminine power. What comes out of the feminine power? The child. What's the greatest child to ever walk this land? Mashiach ben David. Messiah, the son of David. Because he will be the child, so to speak, who will bring an era of total peace to the world. He is the child who will bring an era of knowledge of God to the world. He is the one who will bring the world to its ultimate fruition. Comes out of David. The 7th. Okay, story of Malchus. This is a great man here. His name is Rabbi Shlomo Freifeld. He had a way of building people up through the energies and the faith they put in him. One story I'll just tell you. A boy came to him one time for a job as a janitor in the yeshiva. Now this boy comes for an interview, and he notices the boy's last name is the name of a very prominent rabbinic family. So he says to the boy, I notice your last name is Rabinowitz, let's say. Are you related to the great Rabbi so-and-so Rabinowitz? And he says, yeah, that's my father. He says, really? Wow, you come from an amazing family. He says, thank you. And he started talking to him, and he gets the story. This kid grew up, this kid is brilliant, a smart kid, grew up going to the best of yeshivas and schools, but unfortunately, he went through a phase, got involved in the wrong friends, got involved in the wrong actions, and one thing led to the next, and he ended up leaving his faith and just going to a bad place in life in general, to the point where he had to end up looking for a job as a janitor. So Rabbi Freifeld says to him, look, I have a job for you, but not the janitor job. That's not available right now. But I have a job. I'll be happy to pay you. He says, really, what's that job? He says, I've got a bunch of boys in my yeshiva who are not so strong in their learning. I want you to take on 4 of them. I have 4 specific boys in mind who are struggling. And you're a smart boy. You're a very smart boy. You've gone to the best of yeshivas. I want you to teach these boys how to learn. He says, Rabbi, look at me. I have this long hair. I'm wearing ripped jeans and a Grateful Dead t-shirt, right? I'm a pothead, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you want me to teach? He says, listen, I'm just telling you, this is the job that I have available. I'll pay you the salary you're looking for, but I need you to teach these boys. He says, what, Rabbi, you want me to come in like a rabbi tomorrow? I've got to put on a suit and a tie and a yarmulke? He says, no, you don't got to put on anything. You come however you want. I want you to teach these 4 boys. I said, okay, fine. All right, it's less hours, same pay, less physical labor. He says, fine. So the next day, he's about to walk out of his door. He's wearing his ripped jeans, Grateful Dead t-shirt, long hair, and he's thinking, I'm going to teach these boys Torah. I should probably put on a yarmulke. The rabbi said I don't have to do anything, but I should put on a kippah. So he puts on a yarmulke. And he goes and he teaches the boys. And he actually is a great teacher. He knows the stuff. He's able to explain it very well. A week goes by and he thinks to himself, he's like, you know what, here I am. I'm teaching these boys Torah. I'm not even wearing tzitzis. And there's a mitzvah that every day a Jew is supposed to wear these fringed garments, right? I'm wearing a t-shirt. There's clearly no fringes hanging down. He's like, I don't got to wear them all day, but maybe when I go teach, I should wear tzitzis. Starts wearing tzitzis. A week goes by. It's going really well. The guys love him. He's one of them. Here are the boys who are used to feeling like they're the weak boys in the yeshiva. But now they're being taught by this guy. He's cool. He knows where they're coming from. He's been on the streets like them. They love him. He sees how much they love him and how much they're learning. He's getting into it. A week goes by. He says, you know what? I'm teaching these boys. I probably shouldn't be walking in with this like mop head. I should get a haircut. And then one day, I should put down at least a collared shirt, like a polo shirt, and then at least a button-down shirt. As the year went on, this boy, without any instructions, no yelling at him, no screaming, what are you doing? Your parents come from here. This boy went from being a pothead bum who was desperate, fallen to bad times, bad friends, bad everything, is now a fully practicing rabbi in the yeshiva. That's a man who took the power that was invested in him by his community and his yeshiva, because most people, you couldn't get away with doing that, right? Most yeshivas, they, imagine today if your parent, some kid would come back from one of these private Jewish schools and say, oh yeah, we got taught today by some pothead, ripped jeans, Grateful Dead t-shirt guy, the parents are, am I paying $20,000 for my kid to be taught by a stoner? But they invested in him, and he changed the lives of thousands of people. That's what it means to be malchus, a leader. That's able to take what the energy that people give him and build them up, build himself up, build up the community. Okay, how do they interact? Again, we have Netzach and Hod are the 2 sides of the relationship, passivity and dominance. Yesod is the perfect blending. You know when to be passive, when to be dominant, when to be passive, when to be dominant. And when you do that, you create the perfect relationship upon which you have Malchus, which is the feminine side, which takes it up, that perfect relationship, and builds on it. And the fruit of that of that relationship are great children, great marriage, great happiness, okay? I'm going to skip this for a second. All right. Here we go. We're going to skip this. All right, let's get practical. We have endurance. Today we have to study, remember, the last four are endurance, humility, relationships, and kingship. And they all have to bounce off the 7. Remember that? Okay, here we go. Starting. Chesed, of endurance. Does my stability hurt others? Sometimes you have a guy who, he's never late, but because of that, he's a tyrant in his house. You have to be kind in your endurance. You understand what I'm saying? There's kindness of endurance. If your endurance is hurting other people, that's not kindness in your endurance. Next, discipline of endurance. Am I unwilling to break certain bad habits, right? Meaning sometimes my enduring habit is that I bite my nails. It's just who I am. I gotta be able to be disciplined in my endurance, to be able to have endurance in the right areas and not in the wrong areas. Compassion in endurance. Is there compassion in my endurance? For example, do I ignore the person in my office who needs that ear because I'm driven to finish my job? I'm the super stable employee. I finish everything on time. It's right before a big report is due, and my coworker comes to the door, and he's going through crazy stress. He's going through a divorce. His kid got sick, and he just wants to talk for a little bit. But I got to get my work out on time. I'm on time, Charlie. How does that compassion interplay with your endurance? Are you able to have that compassion together with your endurance? Endurance of endurance. How pure is my endurance? Sometimes I'm thinking like, I don't have the ability. I could never really do this for the rest of my life. Let's say, for example, make a blessing when I make a cup of water, right? Simple blessing. I didn't make it today when you saw me because I already made it beforehand. Someone said something about every time you drink a cup of water, there's a blessing to make. Oh no, I can never do that. I can never make a blessing every time I drink a cup of water. Don't underestimate your endurance. Your endurance has endurance. Okay? Splendor, humility of endurance. Am I convinced that I'm better than other people because I have stability and they don't? Because I have endurance and they don't? Okay? For example, I put in here AA. Right? What does AA stand for? Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous is that they should never be haughty. They should always recognize that their ability to stay sober comes from a higher power. And the minute you start thinking, oh, look at me, I'm the higher power, that's why I'm able to stay off the drink, and these guys in my meeting, they're a bunch of losers. That's a problem. Do I recognize that my strength and endurance is a gift from God that I should be humbled by and thankful for? Bonding of endurance. Do I bond with my goals for endurance? Meaning, bond is create a relationship, connect. I have a goal for endurance. I want to start from now on being on time. I want to start from now on making a blessing every time I drink a cup of water, right? Because that's an amazing thing. Water is purely miraculous. We can talk about that at a different time. Do I say, okay, I'll do that after the summer? Because in the summer, I'm going out to Miami, and it's hot over there, and I drink a lot of water, and it'd be hard for me, so I'll start after the summer. That's not bonding with your endurance goals. That's like throwing them off to the future. You got to bond and connect with them and make them real right now. Next, malchut of endurance. Does my endurance bring out the best in me? Do I come out looking dignified or like the rat who wins the race? Okay? Next, chesed of hod, empathy and humility. Now we get to kindness of humility. Does my humility empower me to give or to say, oh, I can't? Sometimes a guy's so humble, they come to him and show and they say, we'd like you to be in charge of a new campaign for the building. The guy says, me? What am I? I'm just a little worm. I'm so humble. I can't put together a campaign to help a new building fund. No. I've got no talents. I'm just a nobody. No. That's the wrong kind of humility. That's where your humility is getting in the way of your kindness. That's not. You want humility that enables kindness, not humility that blocks you from kindness. Discipline of humility. Do I sometimes allow evil to continue on in the name of humility? Right? Meaning, think about this. Think about the Nazis. Too many people said, oh, we can't do anything about it. And because of that, great evil abounded in the world. Right? People were just saying, look, who am I? Who am I to say something? Who am I to do something? No. That's undisciplined humility. That's putting your humility in the wrong place. Compassion of humility. Does my humility turn me into a hermit or force me into being compassionate and helping others. Some people could say, I feel so small that I'm gonna be like a little bit of like a loner. I'm gonna stay by myself. No, your humility should compel you to engage in others, with others in a compassionate way. Endurance of humility. Does my humility change based on who I'm around? Right? There you go, sorry. There are certain people, when they're around people who are, so to speak, in their mind greater than them, they're so humble, self-effacing. But when they're around other people who they perceive to be lower than them on the totem pole, suddenly they're snobbish, they're haughty. That's not endurance of humility. Humility needs to be stable all across the board, whether you're with somebody who's much greater than you or somebody who you perceive to be lower, so to speak, on the totem pole than you. Humility means I recognize that everybody in some way is greater than me on the totem pole. Yeah, this is a great one. Humility of humility. Do I take too much pride in my humility? That's a great one. Oh, me? I'm such a humble guy, right? That's a great. I'm such a humble guy, right? There's a famous story. Whatever. Okay, I don't have time for it. There's a lot of famous stories I don't have time for. Okay, bonding of humility. Does my humility bring me closer to others or further away? And of course, kingship of humility. Does my humility make me feel dignified or crushed? Do I feel alive and vibrant even while being humble? Okay, we did here two. Again, we did the two interactions with all seven from last week, kindness and discipline. We did two of the interactions of endurance and humility, but they all have applications. Unfortunately, time does not allow us to do all those. It has been a great pleasure hanging with all of you, learning with all of you, growing with all of you. And I think pretty much right now you guys are all perfect. So if you'd like to, after you're done, you can come over to me and get a certificate of perfection. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you around.